Our service on this Easter morning is the first service in a month with the theme Becoming. And Easter represents the possibility of entering a new kind of existence. I'm glad that you're with us this morning, and we'll begin.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Sam Ossie, and I serve on the UU Fellowship of Ames Board of Directors. I want to thank you all for being here today and extend a special welcome to any visitors and guests. After the service, please consider staying online for a virtual coffee hour and join us in conversation. We also hope that you will sign the guest book on the UUFA website. Last March, the UUFA Board of Directors voted to close the fellowship building indefinitely. We continue to monitor the recommendations of the UUA and community health experts regarding conditions that guide the decision-making on when to reopen the building. A regathering task force is developing a plan that outlines how we will return to the building when it is safe to come together in person again. We are committed to providing a safe environment for all who call our fellowship home. While it's hard to be apart for so long, it's good to remember that even though the building is closed, the fellowship remains open. Please read the weekly email and check the UUFA website for a complete schedule of various ways that we can be connected throughout the week. While you're checking your email, also make sure that you fill out the survey that was sent out a while ago, collecting information and ideas about where we want to go from here. So, on behalf of this caring, nurturing congregation, I welcome each and every one of you to this virtual and sacred space. Here, we invite you into an experience of transformation, hope, renewal, and connections, which may inspire you to understand life in new ways. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sam. Each week we begin our service with the ringing of our chime 3 times. Once to wake the chime, once to open our minds, and once to open our hearts. And we have our chalice lighting, which the words this morning are written by Elizabeth Strong.
In the world of the driven, let us be drawn in. Let your love be a given, let us be drawn in. To imagine, to dream, to create, to redeem, for the sake of the living, let us be drawn in.
Out of the earth rises light, rises life, rises spring. May we join with the miracle that is springtime and enter into life with lightness and joy. Out of the Spirit rises faith, rises hope, rises love. May we join with the miracle that is Easter time and enter into life with hope and love. Let us resurrect with spring. Let us resurrect with the Spirit and enter into renewed life as we gather together this Easter morning.
In the world of the driven, let us be drawn in. Let your love be a given, let us be drawn in. To imagine, to dream, to create, to redeem, for the sake of the living, let us be drawn in.
Our opening song this morning comes out of the Plum Village tradition. It's a choral adaptation of When I Rise by Shane Jewell, with the lyrics inspired by Wendell Berry and Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a lovely tune, and I hope that you will join the worldwide choir in singing. The offertory recipient for the month of April is Able Up Iowa. Able Up Iowa assists individuals of all abilities by providing financial solutions that focus on helping people achieve independence and financial relief through traditional, credit builder, or forgivable low-interest loans. These loans help individuals purchase assistive technology, wheelchair-accessible vans, cars for someone to get to work, or for home modification and repairs. In addition, financial empowerment coaches work one-on-one with clients to establish the skills, knowledge, and habits necessary for them to gain and maintain financial independence. After the service, if you would like to give your gift to support the work of this organization, please go to our website and the giving tab, and we will receive your generous donation on behalf of Able Up Iowa. Thank you for your generosity. Our time for all ages this morning is a recrafting of the story, The Rabbi's Gift by Francis Dorff, which was rewritten by Alice Anacheka Naisman and Elisa Davey. The time for all ages this morning is called The Messiah is Among You. And if you're not sure what a Messiah is a human being, a chosen one, who will teach people and lead them to making the world a place of peace. Mr. Cohen was the teacher of the most quarrelsome third grade you could ever imagine. The children argued about everything. They argued about who should stand in front of the lunch line. They argued about what games to play during recess. They argued about who was the best reader in the class. And Mr. Cohen, if he asked them whether it was sunny or rainy outside, they even argued about that. Mr. Cohen was at his wits' end. There was so much arguing going on that no one was learning anything. When they tried to do multiplication tables, Janie and Stan argued about whether 2 times 2 was the same as 2 plus 2 or not. Imagine. And when it was time for spelling, Carmen and Ling began to quibble about who would get the first turn in the spelling bee. In music class, Carlos and Beth each tried to grab the tambourine, and Carlos ended up in the nurse's office when the tambourine hit him on the head. Mr. Cohen tried everything. He promised the class an ice cream party if they could get through just one day without an argument. No sooner had he made the offer than Charles and Bobby began to argue about whether they should get chocolate chip or cookie dough ice cream. I myself would like chocolate chip. Mr. Cohen said he'd send anyone who was arguing to the principal's office. Didn't work. The principal, Mrs. Sanchez, pulled Mr. Cohen aside at lunch and politely but firmly told him that 15 students in one morning was quite enough, thank you, and she hoped she would be able to get some work done that afternoon. Mr. Cohen called parents. He tried very politely asking the kids to stop. He kept the class in at recess. Nothing worked. There was only one thing left to do. Mr. Cohen went to his synagogue on the Sabbath and prayed. His rabbi noticed his look of despair and went to sit by him. The rabbi listened to Mr. Cohen's tale of the most difficult, argumentative third grade class in history. When she had heard it all, she simply said, "Stay home from work on Monday and leave it to me." That Monday, the kids walked into their classroom and found the rabbi sitting at Mr. Cohen's desk. Of course, they immediately began to argue about whether Mr. Cohen was sick or whether Mrs. Sanchez had finally gotten so tired of the steady stream of arguing children that she showed up at her office every day that she'd fired him. The rabbi sat and listened. She didn't yell or try to interrupt them. She didn't plead or scold. She simply sat quietly at Mr. Cohen's desk. After a while, the kids began to wonder what was going on. The arguments died down as the kids watched the rabbi to see what would happen next. When the classroom was finally quiet, the rabbi slowly stood up. Mr. Cohen will not be here today. I am your substitute teacher, but I only have one thing to teach you. Listen carefully, for I will not repeat it. The kids were too surprised to argue. The rabbi's voice rang out in the stunned silence. Last night in my dreams, God told me a Messiah is among you. What do you suppose happened next? They argued, of course. Pandemonium broke out in the classroom as the kids argued about who might be the Messiah. It couldn't be Charles. He was always getting into mischief. But on the other hand, Charles could always be counted on to help a friend or share his lunch. What about Janie? She always did her work so carefully and neatly. The arguing didn't stop overnight. When Mr. Cohen returned to school on Tuesday morning, the first thing he heard was Stan's angry voice. I'm telling you, Carmen, Bobby is the Messiah. Just the other day, I saw him comforting a little first grader who had scraped her knee. Isn't that the sort of thing a Messiah would do? Soon, however, the arguments began to disappear. When Janie began to argue with Charles that she should be the line leader, she suddenly offered to stand behind him in line. After all, Charles might be the Messiah. And in music class, Carlos and Beth took turns using the tambourine. After all, one of them might be the Messiah. All that year, the kids kept trying to figure out who the Messiah might be. They began thinking about each other differently. They noticed all of the good things about each other. Stan was a great artist with a huge imagination. Ling was passionate and strong. Carmen was the most loyal friend you could ask for. And as for Mr. Cohen, he was gentle and kind as a teacher. Maybe he was the Messiah. The kids also began to think about themselves differently. Each child wondered, could I be the Messiah? The children were inspired to be the best people they could be. Soon, the kids in Mr. Cohen's class had a reputation for treating each other well. Teachers came from far and wide to visit the class and ask Mr. Cohen for teaching tips. The year ended, and the kids in Mr. Cohen's class graduated, having learned a very important lesson they would never forget. Everyone around you is special, and anyone could be the Messiah. The next fall, Mr. Cohen looked at his brand new class of third graders. Already John and Anna were arguing about whether or not alligators and crocodiles were the same thing. Good morning, children, he began. Has anyone here heard of a Messiah? He lowered his voice to a whisper, so everyone had to be quiet and listen. And he said, I have been told there is a Messiah in this class. That is our time for all ages this morning. Let's sing together, This Little Light.
I'm Sarah Carlson, and our reading this morning is by Victoria Weinstein, Being the Resurrection. The stone has got to be rolled back from the tomb again and again every year. Roll up your sleeves. He's not coming back, you know. He's not coming back unless it is we who rise for him. We who lay healing hands on the reviled and rejected like he did on his behalf. We who rage for righteousness in his insistent voice. We who love the sinner, even knowing that the sinner is no farther off than our own heartbeat. He will not be back to join us at the table to share God's extravagant banquet, God's love feast. All are invited. Come as you are. And so it is you and I who must feast for him, must say the grace and break the bread and pass it to the left and dish up some broiled fish or pour the wine and pass it to the right and treat each one so tenderly, as though just this morning she or he made the personal effort to make it back from heaven or from hell, but certainly from death, to be by our side. Because if by some miracle, and why not a miracle, he did come back, wouldn't he want to see us like this? Wouldn't it be a miracle to live for just one day, so that if he did, by some amazing feat, come riding into town, he could take a look around and say, this is what I meant. And we could say, it took us a long time, but we finally figured it out. Oh, let us live to make it so. You are the resurrection and the life.
Each week, we take time in our service to share things that are happening in our lives, milestones, significant things that are bringing us joy or challenge or gratitude. As I open the room to sharing, please give each other space, introduce yourself, share your milestone, and let us know when you're finished. This is our time of sharing.
Okay, I'll go. This past week has been a week of birthdays. In my family, my birthday was last Saturday, and my granddaughter's was last Sunday, and my son's was Thursday. And it's just been a wild week. And it's been the most I've been out of my apartment in the last 13 months. And it was fun, really fun. Thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Desha. I have a gratitude praise to share that my stepfather got really sick this week and ended up in the hospital. He had had a heart attack, and he thankfully is home now. The doctors were able to give him the care he needed right away, and he got a stent put in and is back at home as of yesterday. So I'm grateful that he was able to get the care he needed. He's back home. Thank you.
Okay. Cindy and I have just recently moved to a new home, or a different home anyway. And recently we planted an asparagus bed. And we anticipate this will be a new beginning for us, in which we expect each year to see new life springing from the ground. And we look forward to this every year for a long time yet to come. Thank you.
I'm Wes Shank, short milestone, nearly perfect Zoom reception today. Finished.
For those milestones that have been shared, and for those that we carry tenderly in our hearts, please know that whatever brought you here today, no one needs to make the journey alone, and that you are loved. With those milestones in our hearts and mind, let's be together in a moment of silence. It's good to be together. This morning, I'd like to share with you a message from Loyosh and Tundi. We've exchanged Easter greetings, and I would like to share the letter that he wrote to all of us. We are thinking of you always with all love in our hearts. Yes, this past year was very hard. For us was better because we could keep our services in church, could meet each other, but you have met only in front of the computer. Even though we experienced how the pandemic made distances between us, how the fear came into our community. Unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to many brothers and sisters last year, women and men who were base people to our community. Some of them you should remember. They didn't pass away because of the pandemic, but their last service was like we could keep in this strange time. We remember them with love, and in our remembrance, their faces are together with memories and times that we spent together with you here in Tordet-Falva, because they were always there to pray, to sing, to be together with you. Yet this year brought us strength and gratitude too, because we learned how to take care more of each other, to see how important the community is, how weak can be life alone, and how strong can be together. We are grateful to you for your great help for our meal program. These times when especially old people was not wise to go out, it was more important to bring food to them. At one point, we almost had to stop doing this great job because we had no income to do it. You understood it, helped us, so we could bring the daily warm meal to these 120 people. We thank you for this very much. Your understanding, your empathy, your love helped us to go further on our way, and we do it even now, every day. Spring comes late this year, but will be here step by step. Easter is the biggest sign of it. There are many on the planet who put big stones on Jesus's tomb, and they do not want to let him out, do not want the light, the love, the understanding, the acceptance, the forgiveness to live. But like flowers come out, like you can't push the green grass back into soil, life, love will resurrect and will come out of the earth. Jesus said, go out like sheep between wolves. Be wise like serpent and peaceful like doves. And the darkness will change to light, hatred to love because of your acts. Because you are the salt of life, you have to be the light of the world. And if your life will mirror the kindness of God, people will follow you. Resurrection is a miracle in nature, but resurrection can be a miracle in society only with our help. Be kind and love, and the earth will change to good. We wish you happy Easter. Be healthy. God bless you. Ishten Algen. Love, Loyosh, Tundi, and the people of Tordet-Falva and Chayet-Falva. Our special music this morning is number 61 in the Gray Hymnal, Lo, the Earth Awakens, with the words by Samuel Longfellow, a version of John Arnold's Complete, sung by the UU Society of Laconia, New Hampshire, and the lyrics are available. And let's sing together.
Lo, the earth awakes again, hallelujah, from the winter's bond and pain, hallelujah, bring relief and flower and spring, hallelujah, to adorn this happy day, once again the word comes true, hallelujah, all the earth shall be made new, hallelujah, now the dark cold days are o'er, hallelujah, spring and gladness are before, hallelujah. changed and morning into praise. Hallelujah. And for dirges anthems raised. Hallelujah. Our spirits soar and sing. Hallelujah. Our sleep with the spring. Hallelujah.
Easter, a new kind of existence, part 1. This beautiful Easter morning, imagine a forest with an unconceivable and endless number of beautiful trees. The forest and each of the trees are always growing, never finished, never perfect, always changing. Now imagine these trees and this forest representing all the religions of the world, the different prophetic voices of all time, and the myriad of different beliefs and stories about the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and the many beliefs held and cherished here in this sacred virtual space. Like the trees and the forest, we are ever growing, ever changing. We exist somewhere between perfection and inadequacy, and that is called being whole. It is also called being enough. For multitudes of people in the world, these holy days define a faithful life and mark the path to salvation in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It is a deeply mystical time that challenges, enthralls, confounds, and changes people in a profound way. Having left the church at an early age, I attended services with my mother on Christmas and Easter to keep peace in the family. Easter was particularly challenging. I enjoyed the family gatherings, the wonderful meals, the fun and frivolity of Easter egg hunts, and then there was church. The music and the flowers were beautiful, and I struggled. I still continue to struggle with the rest. Although I admit in my younger years and more mature years up until seminary, the struggle was more like complete rejection than questioning. The church taught lessons that had me questioning my personal worth, goodness, and dignity. In the terms of the church, I was not whole or even adequate to enter heaven. I couldn't understand or accept the notion of salvation through the violent death of a loving, prophetic, religious leader. The miracle of his rising from death after 3 days was a struggle to believe. For me, it still is. For many believers, it is not. In the continuum and tension line of believing and not believing, our spiritual forest is growing. My spiritual and theological development shifted from rejection to questioning, investigating, deconstructing, and reconstructing the sacred texts. And I can honestly say that I now find Easter in all of its complexities to be an incredible time of faith, hope, and spiritual renewal. In our 8 years together, I have suggested that something happened and is happening in the Gospels that touched people and continues to touch people deeply, for better or for worse. When we come face to face with something that makes us question truth or feel suspicious, we must try to find the generosity to consider the text or texts on a deeper level, because they have changed the world, for better or for worse. There is nothing wrong in questioning what has been affirmed as true. It is one of our covenanted Unitarian Universalist principles, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. In younger days, it made me feel anxious, tense, and sometimes angry to question issues around resurrection, salvation, and grace. Having little contact with any church for over 25 years, I didn't understand that many believers carry the same questions and tensions. The Episcopal Bishop John Shelby Spong speaks to this anxiety and the crucial importance of questioning. He writes, "I do admit that to enter this subject honestly is to invite great anxiety. It is to walk the razor's edge, to run the risk of cutting the final cord still binding many to the faith of their mothers and fathers. But the price for refusing to enter this consideration for me is even higher. The inability to question reveals that one has no confidence that one's belief system will survive such an inquiry. That is tacit recognition that on unconscious levels, one's faith has already died. If one seeks to protect God from truth or new insights, then God has surely already died." Parallel to my rejection of significant Christian teachings and beliefs was a deep and abiding belief in God. My belief in God has been questioned, tested, and transformed through the years and continues to evolve. But that's not my point here. My point is, if I had heard a religious leader's voice speak to the importance of questioning the most fundamental and sacred beliefs as a means of engaging a spiritual quest, I might have found and become part of this community of Unitarian Universalist questioners and seekers decades ago. I do not say this with regret. I'm right where I need to be on this journey of faith, still learning, still questioning, still transforming. I am somewhere between perfection and inadequacy. I am whole. I am enough. There are times when I feel too close to inadequate to be enough. And at those times, I remind myself, and today I remind us all, we are whole. We are enough. Please join in singing "I Know This Rose Will Open" by Mary Gregolia, sung by Jess Hoodman.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open.
Part 2. There is an incredible range of complexity and beliefs found in the historic and cultural context of the Holy Land in the four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which were probably written 40 to 70 years after the death of Jesus. One can also find there the same complexity of beliefs about resurrection and life after death. In the first century, beliefs ranged from a denial of any future life after death to a belief of the continuation of the disembodied spirit to bodily rebirth. 2,000 odd years later, we have made little progress in coming to any consensus of agreement. That's probably a good thing. In the midst of these historic, cultural, and theological debates, the distinguished American literary critic Bruce Barr shares this insight. The important thing about the resurrection is that something extraordinary happened after the crucifixion to provide Jesus's demoralized followers with a profound illumination that turned their picture of things completely around and made them spend the rest of their lives preaching this resurrection with all the fervor in the world. What form that illumination took ultimately doesn't matter. What matters is that it opened the disciples' eyes to the truths implicit in the way Jesus had lived and the things he taught. Jesus had been as deeply and remarkably human as anyone his disciples had ever known. And at the same time, he seemed to have been touched by God in a way that seemed to them utterly without precedent. The two things, his profound humanity and his intense closeness to God, were bound together inextricably. And at the heart of the mystery of that bond was love, a light that never went out. Jesus' execution horrified his disciples. Yet in its wake, they reflected on the man and his ministry. He had preached eternal life, which he had talked about in a mystical way and as a present reality. His teachings about God's kingdom were strange and new, and yet his words about that kingdom seemed to beckon them toward a truth that was powerfully affirmed in their hearts. As long as the eternal Godless existed, how could Jesus die? After the crucifixion, something made them realize beyond a doubt and to the depths of their hearts that in some mysterious sense, he couldn't die, and neither could they, in whose hearts he lived. End quote. Love never dies. As we consider this incredible and miraculous story told by multiple voices in frequently conflicting versions, we change and are changed again. We are captured by the stories of the women discovering an empty tomb, a huge stone mysteriously moved away. Oxford religious scholar N.T. Wright tells us that the emerging from the tomb is metaphoric for the first day of God's new week, the moment of sunrise after the long night, the time of new meetings, new meals, of new reconciliation and new commissioning. It is the beginning of new creation. It is therefore the sign of hope for the future. Resurrection is greater than life returning to a dead body. Resurrection is an entering into a new kind of existence. The followers of Jesus experienced the darkest night of their soul when the man who was their teacher and minister was killed. an unconditionally loving and prophetic voice silenced. Whatever happened around the rolling away of the stone and the empty tomb, a devastating and profound experience took them and the world into a new kind of existence. The stone has got to be rolled back from the tomb again and again every year. Roll up your sleeves. He's not coming back, you know. He's not coming back unless it is we who rise for him. We who lay healing hands on the reviled and rejected like he did on his behalf. We who rage for righteousness in his insistent voice. We who love the sinner even knowing that the sinner is no further off than our own heartbeat. Because if by some miracle, and why not a miracle, he did come back, wouldn't he want to see us like this? Wouldn't it be a miracle to live for just one day so that if he did by some amazing feat come riding into town, he would look around and say, "This is what I meant." And we could say, "It took us a long time, but we finally figured it out." We are somewhere between perfection and inadequacy. We are whole. We are enough. We are the resurrection and the life. Amen. Blessed be, and happy Easter. The closing song today is from the Teal Hymnal, number 1010, We Give Thanks, sung by the Tennessee Valley UU Church Choir. Please join us in singing We Give Thanks.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
We extinguish the chalice with words by Sarah York. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. It is particularly meaningful to remember our friends in Tordet Falva with the Easter message sent to us and how that is so fitting for this day. Please remember that to give to our offertory recipient, Able Up Iowa, please go to our UUF Ames website and find the Giving tab, and you can make your offering or also support other initiatives important to this congregation, Black Lives Matter, and our partner church. Thank you for being with us this morning. We'll now go into breakout rooms and then back into a larger group after a few minutes of sharing time. Thank you.